What is up, YouTube? Welcome to today's video, and we are going to go over why I am such a terrible player. Every single day I stream, everyone always asks me to type in /deaths, and we see I have died 1,410 times. And what they say is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, so I'm going to impart some of my wisdom regarding about how to never die again and how to stop dying, especially if you're a new player or you're playing like softcore trade or anything and you want to just stop your character from dying, especially since a lot of people are playing a kind of glass cannon playstyle with lightning arrow or any sort of Deadeye build. Now, if you're playing Righteous Fire even, you can still die nowadays, and there are some little tips and tricks, but the biggest thing that I want to stress over and over again is that you need to meet a sort of basic defensive checklist if you actually care about never dying in maps. And one of the first items is honestly spell suppression and having 100% spell suppression. Now, this video is not really going to be great if you actually can stand dying sometimes, so you don't need to go through the whole defensive checklist. However, this is for someone who actually wants to level to 100 and not have to worry about any sort of deaths. And players honestly have no idea how dangerous map mods are and how bad the downsides for Eldritch Altars are. We're going to go over all of the dangerous downsides and what exactly is going to kill you in maps. And lastly, you can increase your efficiency by using this website called PoE.re, also known as Regex, to roll your maps in bulk, avoid the dangerous map mods, and stay safe. So let's get straight into it. First off, we have the basic defensive checklist. Now, I am guilty. I don't really have this basic defensive checklist even ticked off for myself for my League Star Lightning Arrow build because I don't really mind dying as much as some other people, as you can see from my number of deaths. Now, number one I want to straight up mention is that GGG added a big change in 3.21. They added chaos damage map modifiers and also a rare mod called Profane that makes it so that you have to have some sort of positive chaos resistance if you want to never die. And this was seen in that a lot of people who were playing Righteous Fire were actually dying because they were getting killed by chaos damage, because a lot of those builds don't really build any sort of chaos res because it was never really that big of a problem before. So what this mod does is it causes the monsters to deal extra physics chaos damage, and it also inflicts a debuff that makes you take more chaos damage the more debuff stacks you have. So make sure you have positive chaos res. And next up, we have 100% spell suppression. At this point in the game, 100% spell suppression is almost mandatory. The only way around 100% spell suppression is to get max res, so you have 90% max res if possible. And if you have 90% max res and 100% spell suppression, your character is more or less immune to elemental damage. Now, next up, a lot of people are playing, especially bow builds. They're running around with no evasion rating at all. They're not running a Jade Flask, and they actually have 0% evasion. So what that means is that when you're actually in a map, every single mob projectile is going to hit you. And when you're mapping, a lot of the hits are tiny, small hits. So you are taking a factor of so much more damage compared to someone who has 60 to 70% evasion. So instead of being hit with 3 hits only, you're getting hit with 10 hits. And that is one of the easiest ways to increase your defenses. So you can see right here, running Grace alone. So I have 0% evasion. Running Grace and having a Jade Flask brings me to 73% evasion. And I don't even have that much evasion on my gear outside of my helm. So it is very, very important to try to get evasion. I think 0% evasion, 0% physical damage reduction is a super easy way to die. Watcher's Eye, 8% chance to evade is also a great help. You can also get Watcher's Eye Grace with spell suppression to help you out. Now, next up is physical damage reduction. Now, if you have evasion and you don't really mind dying, you can kind of get away with no physical damage reduction. But if you really want to never die, you need to make sure you have some way of mitigating your physical damage reduction. So you can run a Granite Flask that can get you to 40 to 50% physical damage reduction. And without any physical damage reduction at all, even the smallest physical hits are going to be relatively deadly and physical spells. Now, there are some ways around not having any sort of armor. You can get endurance charges if you have endurance charge on kill. or you can use Enduring Composure. And next up, you have physical damage taken as elemental. So a lot of people playing Pathfinder, they get a flask called Taste of Hate that makes it so that 15% of their fizz is taken as cold. There's also the Gravicious chest that makes it so you take fizz as lightning and fire, I think, or cold. And then the Corel Helmet Craft fizz taken as fire. There's also an Eldritch Implicit with fizz taken as. And there's even Lightning Coil to make it so that you take 50% of your physical damage as lightning. So then you don't need to worry about armor as much. So lots of different ways to fix your physical damage reduction problem. Now, ailment immunity is something else that a lot of people don't run with. And if you don't run with ailment immunity, chances are you are going to die in maps sooner or later. Shock is extremely, extremely deadly. It gives like 50% more damage, increased damage taken. So if you don't have any ailment immunity, try to spec these two Pantheons that gives you reduced effective shock and immune to freeze and reduced effective chill. And an easy solution that a lot of people kind of overlook is just running Purity of Elements. Running Purity of Elements gives you ailment immunity and you don't need to worry about it. And with a Watcher's Eye, you can even get 50% Chaos Res on that Purity of Elements. So all that defensive checklist aside, map mods are probably the #1 reason that a lot of people complain about why they are dying. Map mods are a complete game changer. They are the reason why people even in Gauntlet are running white and blue maps. And it's not because they can't run the harder map mods. It's because the chance of dying increases by so much more. And it's also exponential. The more dangerous map mods you have on top of each other, the more damage the mobs are going to do. And if you put the tankiest character, like a Righteous Fire character with max block, and you give them a map with minus max and reduced chance to block, the character will die. It's as simple as that. No character will out-tank the hardest map mods in the game, especially on Wandering Path. So you have to identify for yourself what are these dangerous map mods. And some of the dangerous ones include minus max, you cannot regen, less recovery ray, and monsters deal extra physics chaos for chaos, no chaos res builds. Action speed is also huge because the mobs will be super fast. Monsters have increased crit chance and multi. If you have no crit immunity, that is a sure way to die. Monsters have chance to avoid elemental ailments is also really, really bad, especially if you rely on freeze or chill as part of your layers of defense. So right here, you can see a lot of the different map mods. And once you get a combination of damage mods, say you get like monster damage and cold damage and minus max, the monster is going to be doing exponentially more damage than it normally would because it all compounds on top of one another. So it is absolutely crazy. And this is before we even get into the Eldritch Altars. Now, next up, we have the other type of map mods that make the map a lot more dangerous, which is the HP mods. Then the longer a mob stays alive, the more of a chance you have to die. So if you do a map with monster life reduced crit and chaos and elemental resistance, the monster is going to have like 10 times more HP than normal. And that is going to make the map longer. It's going to make you lose more money. And it's going to make you die more because you are fighting the monster forever. So map mods are something I highly advise. When I leveled to 98 on the Lightning Arrow character, it's not because this character was super tanky. It's because I chose map mods so that I didn't have any sort of 2 damage mods on the map. And that's the same thing for hardcore. When you play hardcore, you don't run damage mods on your maps if you can avoid it, until your build is like super, super crazy. Now, build specific map mods or something else. So a lot of people put in like cooldown recovery rate. And then if you're playing a Strength Stacker that need Battle Mage's Cry or you're cast on crit, the cooldown recovery rate is going to kind of break your build. Reflect is another issue, as we all know. A lot of people put in a Reflect map, expect that they won't die, and they die because for bow builds, for instance, you have Mana Forge arrows that isn't linked to level 5 Awakened Elemental damage with attacks. So you can get Reflect immunity if you take the Pantheon right here, Soul of Ugol, that gives you 50% reduced reflected damage, and you take the corresponding Fizz or Elemental Mastery, that makes it so you take 60% reduced reflected Fizz or Elemental, 60% reduced reflected Elemental. So with that added together, you have 110%. So that makes it so you take no reflect damage at all. Desecrated Ground is another killer. A lot of people run that. They have no regeneration like Comb Spirit. And then they go into the map and they're just degenning and they just die straight up. Monster Steal, Frenzy, Power, and Endurance charges is also really dangerous because Say you're a Juggernaut, you have a lot of endurance charges, you rely on physical damage reduction, it's all gone, you just instantly die. And then a lot of people run elemental weakness or something like that, and their resists are not capped. So many different things to look out for. And this is something that really comes from playing the game more. You see all of these scenarios are perfect combinations that kill off your character. And that's why they say, like, experience is really key. So next up, we have Eldritch Altars. And Eldritch Altars are something that are absolutely massive for why people die. And people just go pretty much hog wild clicking these Eldritch Altars, looking at the upsides, never looking at the downsides. And that is literally why they die. And Ziz kind of has the same thing here. Like, he actually gets one-shotted by a blue Jaguar mob because of some conversion mechanics and because he clicked on some Eldritch Altars. Or maybe he didn't even click on any Eldritch Altars. But basically, map mods or Eldritch Altars are one of the biggest killers ever. So I highly recommend you to read it. And we're going to go over some of the big downsides. So player Eldritch Altar downside options greatly change the game, in a sense that you can be taking so much damage from absolutely a map that had nothing on it. So for instance, even the tankiest characters will have no defenses if they click enough of these downsides. Searing Exarch mainly has chaos damage that you really need to watch out for. So there's take 600 chaos damage per second during any flask effect, and 30% chance to be targeted by a meteor when you use a flask. So you can see right here, 600 chaos damage per second, and that's literally going to be fully on if you're using any sort of flask in your map. And then there's also minus armor and minus evasion rating, and that's a quick way to get to 0 armor, 0 evasion. And then there's also these minus fire res and minus chaos res, and minus cold res and minus lightning res on the Eldritch side, instead, or the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds side. So there's no way a lot of people are capped by that much. So when you click these mods that have like minus 60 cold res, minus 60 lightning res, you are going to be most likely doing the map at 30 or 40 cold res or 30 or 40 lightning res. So, and then a lot of people also do minus max, and they click these altars that says gain 130% of fizz as extra lightning damage. That's going to make you take a factor of so much more damage. There's also downsides like minus 60% physical damage reduction. Even if you're a Juggernaut with like 100,000 armor and a billion endurance charges, minus 60% physical damage reduction is going to get you killed. And there's also minus 50% reduced defenses per frenzy charge. And there's also a reduced recovery rate per endurance charge. So every single downside is completely game breaking. So make sure you read the mods that actually affect you and make a conscious decision. Are these downsides going to outweigh what I actually get from the map? And if you don't really care about dying, it doesn't really matter. So you can see right here, go to PoEDB, Eldritch Altars. You can see all of the downsides for player. And some of them are kind of game breaking in the sense that it fucks up your build, like projectiles are fired in random directions, or non-damaging ailments are reflected back to you if you have no ailment immunity. But just keep in mind, Eldritch Altars are definitely the number one reason why a lot of people die, because they click on it and they don't really read what happens and you're just dead. So next up, we have this one website that I highly recommend that a lot of people use. A lot of people ask me about it all the time on stream. It's called PoE.re. And what this does is it allows you to choose the map mods that you don't want to do. And I did even mention this map mod, reduce effect of non-curse auras, is absolutely awful, especially if you run like Grace or Determination and you rely on it for some sort of defenses. So right here, you can choose the map mods that you don't want to do. So say you can't do LE Reflect, you don't want to do Midas Max, you don't want to do No Regen, you don't want to do reduced effect of curse auras. Then you can even choose the quantity of your map that you want. So how well rolled do you want it to be? And you can even choose certain map mods that you want, like Beyond. And then once you choose everything that you want, you copy it, you go into the game, and you start rolling maps. And then you control, copy, and paste it into this slot down here. And it will highlight all of the map mods or the maps that meet your criteria of excluding these mods and having these mods and having the right quantity and rarity. So I highly recommend you try it out. I'll put a link down in the description below about this website and how you can utilize it in order to increase your mapping efficiency. You'll have better mapping efficiency because you'll roll your maps in bulk, and you'll make sure that you never accidentally roll a reflect map and accidentally die to that. Now, overall, I do think that reading Eldritch Altars in the middle of fighting and combat is really frustrating. I think the leading cause of my deaths is honestly trying to click the altars and read it in time while I'm being swarmed by mobs. I think a nice solution could be having sort of loot filter or something that highlights a dangerous altar mod. Like if it's bad, like make it red or something. I don't really know. That's probably a pipe dream. But I do think if you follow this basic defensive checklist, you go over the map mods, you go over the Eldritch Altars, you will be able to level to 100 on almost every single build as long as you follow these general guidelines. Make sure the map mods are never too crazy. Make sure the Eldritch Altars never have too bad of downsides. And sometimes it is fine to die if you're doing magic finding, you're doing wandering path to get more quad and pack size on the maps. Sometimes you do have to do the bad map mods as they give a lot of quantity. So if you look right here on a wandering path map, I have minus 19% max res. Obviously, that's going to be really rippy, but look at the quant and rarity on the map. And you kind of have to ask yourself, do I really care about not dying or do I want more loot? And wandering path is honestly more dangerous than 100% deli. And freeze and chill is a very, very underrated defensive mechanism. So that's why, like, I think interrogation or brittle is a lot worse nowadays because freeze and chill is really that safe. And that's why builds like frost blades or even like tornado shot, cold conversion feel safe even though they don't have that much defenses, is because everything is frozen or they die before they even get to you. So hopefully this video has helped out people understand why they die so much in the end. It's honestly just because you don't meet the best basic defensive checklist, you don't read the map mods, and you don't read the Eldritch Altars. But thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know down in the comments below if you have tried being more vigilant about this stuff and had good results. But I hope you find more Mirrors, Divines, and Mage Bloods than me. And see you next time. Bye.